Welcome. So my name is Tim Evans. As I said, I am the CEO of HSBC here. I just start with a gentle warning, and that is that I am not a client scientist. I am a very simple banker. I have worked for 30 years, but it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that I've really started to learn and get on the journey with ESG activities. But as you heard from the previous panelists, there's a long way to go. We've come a reasonable distance, but there is a very long way to go. But every journey starts with a small step. And so every step that we take today, even if it is not as fast as we want it to be, is at least getting us in the right direction. Because climate change is very real. I was in the Mekong Delta yesterday talking about future skills courses that we're running at the Cantor University, which is about giving students the background in ESG so that they can contribute to the transition to net zero. And the reality is that 1 meter rise in water in Vietnam could lead to the disappearance of the Mekong Delta, which is 50% of Vietnam's food and around 20% of its population. So these really are unprecedented times that we're living in. And then when I drove home yesterday, and I don't know if anyone here lives in Tao Dien, but it took me about 40 minutes to do about 2 kilometers because the flooding was unreal as I got back. So yesterday I really had a full-on ESG day. And if anyone was around in Ho Chi Minh before the rain started, it felt unbelievably hot compared to previous years. Now, I've only lived here 4 years, but people who've lived here a lot longer were telling me it's very rare to get to 40 degrees. So the impact of climate change is real. It's impacting everyone. It has health impacts. It's impacting the agricultural sector. It's impacting forest sector, water resources, coastal areas. So we're seeing erosion in Vietnam. Anyone who's gone down to Mui Ne will see that every year the beach gets smaller. So it really is impacting wide parts of Vietnam. And Vietnam, according to the World Bank, is a top 5 country globally susceptible to the challenges of climate change. So, and we've seen it recently in the news. Even BBC recorded Vietnam records highest ever temperature at 44.1 degrees C. This is real. So what do we do about climate change? Well, if the climate is changing, then we have to change as well. And as we transition to net zero, I thought I would share with you that what we're doing as a bank, but the reality is to address climate change, everyone is going to have to do something. This is not just up to the government. This is just not up to policymakers. This is not just up to scientists. We're all in this together because that's the only way that we will save this planet, because no one can do it alone. It will involve SMEs eventually. I heard the question earlier. So what do we do at HSBC? And I apologize, someone else put these slides up for me, but they put up HSBC's transition plan. What are we doing as one of the largest international banks globally? And they put this slide up, best practice. I do apologize. I do not know if this is best business practice. It is our practice. So please don't take this one literally, but I just thought I would share what we are trying to do institutionally as a bank that operates in over 60 countries globally, and how do we help our customers to transition. So we started our journey back in 2020. So we're 4 years into this as an organization, and we made a commitment that we would align our financing portfolio to be net zero by 2050. Now, that aligns with Vietnam's ambitions, but that is ahead of where China is, that's ahead of where Indonesia is, that's ahead of where India is. But it's not just a question of ensuring that the companies that we finance are net zero, it's also ensuring that we make a contribution ourselves. And so we have an ambition to become net zero in our own operations by 2030. So today, what are we doing, apart from me standing here talking at this event? Well, in 2021, we added net zero into one of our 4 key strategic pillars. That means that every strategic decision that we make now has to take into consideration the ESG impact that it has on us and our customers. And I think you heard earlier one of the customers saying, part of this transition to net zero is also a cultural shift in organizations. So what have we done? Since 2020, we started off with a commitment to make our own operations net zero by 2030. And I believe that we were the first bank to make a commitment, which was that we would provide up to $1 trillion of sustainable finance by 2030. In 2021, we added net zero as one of our key corporate strategies. We became a member of the Net Zero Banking Alliance, and we published our net zero aligned group thermal coal phase-out policy. At the time, it was felt that coal was one of the biggest contributors to climate warming, to global warming. In 2022, we extended that. We added the amount of finance emissions that we do in the oil and gas sector and the power and utility sector. We also raised $650 million into what we call the Climate Asset Management Fund, which is basically green capital to support companies, we heard earlier, small SME companies that are looking to transition themselves. We joined the Just Energy Transition Partnership, which is ongoing between Vietnam, Indonesia, and also South Africa. And we achieved about $211 billion of the commitment we'd originally made of $1 trillion 2 years earlier. And in 2023, we added other sectors, which was transport, heavy industry. We became a founding member of the Just Transition Finance Hub, which is managed by the London School of Economics, the emphasis being on just. This transition that we take as we move to net zero cannot be at the detriment of large parts of the population. We will not have achieved our objective if that's what we do. And then we also established a 3-year bank-wide internal sustainability transformation program. So the house that I rent at the moment has solar paneling. 70% of the buildings in which we operate in Vietnam are LEED certified, and the ambition is to get to 100%. We've just moved a data center because it was not in a location that was sustainable and moved it to another location. So we will continue to do that even in Vietnam. And then this year, HSBC actually went out and published its net transition plan. So what is that net transition plan? Well, it has 3 sections. The first one is our vision and our strategy. And it highlights our strengths, it highlights actions that we need to take, but it also highlights uncertainties and dependencies. A lot is happening in this space, and things are changing very rapidly. We can't wait until there's certainty before we put together a plan. But we've put a plan together knowing that it will have to evolve, given that the external environment is continuing to evolve. There was talk earlier around just taxonomy in Vietnam, for example. We also look at different sectors. Each sector will have a different transition plan. There is not one size fits all for every single sector globally. And we will have an implementation plan which will also detail how do we get to net zero, not just for ourselves, but for the customers that we support. So in the first part, vision and strategic approach, we looked at our strengths. The first one is we looked at which industries need to transition first. We then looked at supporting those small companies that are out there that are in the new economy, that are creating climate tech, that are coming up with the new solutions that will ensure that we as a planet can transition to net zero. The same way that we had it with the technology revolution, we will have it here. People are probably sat in garages somewhere coming up with climate tech solutions, and they will need funding. And banks cannot just focus on the big corporates. We need to provide support for them as well. And we also have a duty to decarbonize trade and supply chains. HSBC, by virtue of its size and scale, is the #1 trade bank in the world. We have 13% market share. We need to work with our customers to ensure that wherever they are buying from, we can help them and their suppliers transition to net zero. So our implementation plan is about supporting our customers. Transition to net zero cannot be about a bank saying, you're not net zero, I'm going to cut your funding. That cannot be the solution. The solution has to be, what is your transition plan and how can I help you get there? The second one is embedding this into the way we operate. It is part of our culture. We have to live and breathe this every single day, because if not, if we don't have that as part of our culture, we can't hope that our customers do. And we are partnering with governments, with think tanks, with NGOs, to ensure that we can help contribute to systemic change. So our guiding principles are everything we have done will be based on science, will be transparent and accountable. There is a real risk of greenwashing. It is becoming a trend and it is not a marketing play. But there's clearly bad actors out there who will use it as an advertising campaign, as a marketing play. So everything we will do will be science-based, transparent, and accountable. We will integrate nature, and it has to be just and inclusive. As I said earlier, we cannot have a situation where the world moves forward transition to net zero, and large parts of the global economy or global population are adversely impacted by this. Section 2 is on sector transitions. And so we looked at 10 different sectors. energy supply, automotive, aviation, shipping, cement, chemicals, iron and steel, mining, real estate, forests, and other land use, so agriculture sits in there. Our view as a bank, and we may not be right, but these are the 10 sectors that we are focusing on in the transition to net zero. And so what we've done in each sector of our plan, we have the sector, their pathway to net zero, the key technology that they will require to be able to achieve that, the feasibility and timeframes, and then the level of financing required. Because we want to be part of this journey with that sector. And then we know what the requirements are from a funding perspective. And that chapter is then followed with an overview of our portfolio today. So how much of our portfolio has that sector in it? What are the targets? And then we engage with our customers. This has to be symbiotic. As I said, it can't be banks saying you haven't transitioned, therefore we cut your funding. That cannot be the solution. And then we have the implementation plan. So we will support clients, we will engage with them, we will look to provide solutions. We don't have all the solutions today, candidly. We're continuing to look at new products and new solutions together with climate scientists to come up with solutions for our customers. And then we have to embed this in the way we operate as a bank. It has to become part of our DNA. So it's how we manage risk, it's how we drive our policies. Net zero features in every single decision we make. Who we finance, where we open a branch, what sort of product we launch, that has to be in every single decision. Every single credit application that one of our relationship managers puts together has a segment where they have to comment on what is the net zero impact of this company, what are they doing in the sector, and what are we doing as an organization to help them move there. And then we move down to the others, culture, capabilities, and how do we measure progress. And finally, partnering with the right stakeholders, both in the private sector and in the public sector, to make sure it all comes together. So what do we do with our clients? Well, the first thing is we collect information from them. We try and understand what sector are you in, what are your plans. We ask them, we assess them, and we rank them. Those are the most susceptible those that need the most assistance to transition to net zero, those that don't, those that need investment in technology. We then engage with them, and we need to proactively engage with them. And we've started with the big companies, and we're working our way down. This is happening across 63 different countries. This is not just in Vietnam. And then we're looking to sit with them, and where it makes sense, to finance that transition for them. This will be the biggest change in our lifetimes. We as a bank helped finance the Industrial Revolution. We need to be part of the solution of financing the green revolution as well. So it will mean that we have to come at it with the same level of endeavor and commitment. And then finally, we need to monitor it. We need to monitor the progress that we are making in transitioning. So I'm going to skip these slides because I know that we're slightly behind time and they're probably a little bit too detailed. But we do have a range of solutions that we're offering to our customers, and I apologize if the screens are... We have green, sustainable, sustainability-linked bonds. We heard earlier on the panel. We have green, sustainability-linked loans, sustainable finance, and we go through the whole list. Every time we grant one of these loans, it goes through our climate committee that sits in Hong Kong and reviews every single transaction to make sure it's not greenwashing. And that committee is made up of climate scientists. It's not middle-aged bankers like myself who've been learning about this for 2 years. It's people who've lived and breathed this for the last 10 years. And we do the same in our personal banking or private banking. We provide financing for sustainable homes, sustainable mobility, sustainable consumption, sustainable investing. What else are we doing? Well, we're financing sustainable infrastructure. We're currently actively speaking to one of the biggest power generating companies in Vietnam about a smart grid. That is a key requirement in reducing the level of greenhouse gas emissions in Vietnam, is to have a smart grid where solar power, hydroelectric power can enter into. We're also scaling new economy companies. So these are the companies that are developing climate tech. We're actively seeking them out, and we're actively looking to either invest in them or to lend to them. And some of that will be sort of quasi-equity debt, mezzanine debt, because these companies are starved of cash and need it to be able to come up with the next solutions. We've also got an ecosystem where we work across supply chains. So if you're a big importer, we'll take as an example from the US, where you work with a lot of different companies, some of which will be vendors based in Vietnam, some will be based in China. We work across that entire supply chain with our customers to try and help make that net zero. And we've also established a natural capital as an asset class. We are going to have to tap new pools of liquidity to be able to help companies and individuals take part in this transition. So what's next? Well, the reality is there's always more to do, and there will always be more to do. We're at the start of this journey, and the environment will change and become more dynamic, and we will have to adapt to that. So our transition plan is ultimately an aggregation of everything that our customers tell us. Our ability to become net zero by 2050 is highly dependent on the pace of decarbonization in the real economy, and also our customers' ability to transition their business models. As a bank, we see ourselves as a catalyst. We're not a solution in itself. And then rather than wait for some of the areas to become clear, as I said, we can wait for the perfect world before we start this transition journey. The reality is we have to start now. And we will have to change our plans based on available data, infrastructure, research, technology, and standards. They will adapt. But we've got to start somewhere. Our commitment to our customers and to our regulators is we will adapt, and we'll adapt quickly. But we have to start somewhere. So you can probably tell by how old I am, because this is someone that I followed when I was doing my master's. But the message is very clear. What gets measured gets done. And unless we're measuring progress against our net zero ambitions, whether they're for ourselves or for our clients, we will never know if we've got there. So we will disclose every year in our annual report our performance against those key metrics on transition to net zero. So thank you, and I hope that together we can build a greener Vietnam.